Enrolling in the Academy is really simple. You'll just go to our website, wblinc.org/academy. And when you get here, you'll see our main page and you can click enroll and it'll take you to this form where you're just gonna fill this out. It'll take you about 5 minutes. Once you submit this, you're enrolled in the Academy and you'll receive an email from me so you can pick the classes you'd like to take and join our Academy family. So we're an after-school program rooted in hip hop. So we have a bunch of classes that you may find interesting. You can go right to our website and go to our classes tab and you'll see some of them, from performing arts like hip hop theater, spoken word, hip hop dance, some of our business classes that are like a boss and walk it like I talk it, which would be more arts management and entrepreneur based. And then we also have things like our music classes, emceeing and rapping and beat production and DJing. You can go to wblinc.org/academy to enroll.
What's going on, world? It's yours truly, Mazi Mutafa, here for day 3 of the alternative winter break. And I'm super excited to be here talking with my favorite publicist in the entire world, because she's a G at this. So let me go ahead and introduce you all to Mercy Chikowore. She's a public relations nerd with a passion to change the world for the better. With over a decade of experience leading and executing communication strategies for nonprofits, health, tech, and entertainment clients, Mercy has secured an impressive portfolio of local and national media opportunities, landing clients in the Associated Press, Bandcamp, Business Insider, Cosmopolitan, CNBC, Essence, HuffPost, National Geographic Magazine, MSM. Yo, she'd get you in some media. Her clients roster includes TV networks, independent musicians, cryptocurrency companies, women entrepreneurs, fitness experts, and more. Mercy also serves as the Director of Communications for Washington Area Women's Foundation, a community-supported foundation that invests in the power of women and girls of color in Washington, D.C. region. She received her BA in Mass Communication at Clayton University and her MA in Communications from Johns Hopkins University. Born in Tokyo, Japan, and having lived in the U.S., Zimbabwe, and Switzerland, Mercy is obsessed with traveling, sushi, live concerts, and watching her clients win. And if you love her, make sure that you send her the latest, I can't remember what the bag was that you wanted for Christmas. Mercy, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Mazi, thank you for having me.
Of course, it is my honor to be able to have this conversation with you. You are my favorite publicist for a whole range of reasons, including some of those things that I just named, but also just because I think that you're a real person. Like I've definitely worked with people who don't treat their clients like they're real people, and they don't act like real people. And you are not that. And so it's been a joy to learn about the work that you're doing and to be a witness to your ability to leverage relationships to help clients tell bigger stories. So why don't we jump into public relations and why it is, or what happened in your life that made you decide PR, yep, that's what I want to do.
Well, thank you. I'm not allowed to say this, but you are one of my favorite clients. So I might be a little biased, but thank you for having me. And, so as you heard from my bio, I was born in Tokyo. I'm originally from Zimbabwe, and my mom was a diplomat. So we traveled a lot. And I say we a lot in my early years because I was born with someone. I have a twin sister as well. So moving around so much, going from Japan and back to Zimbabwe, then going to New York. I grew up in New York from the age of 3 to 8, came back to Zimbabwe and met my family all over again. They do the whole, remember me when you were a baby? And I'm like, no. So getting to learn my family over again and the culture and the language and the food and everything. And then once we were settled, the age of 11, my mom was like, all right, we're moving to Geneva, Switzerland. And we're like, what? We just got used to where we are now. So, it was a lot as a kid to just it's one thing to have to transfer schools, but to transfer schools, countries, languages, all of that was really hard. But over the years, I found that asking people about themselves was the easiest way to become friends. And also you just get to learn about people because people love talking about themselves. So I really developed a love of storytelling, and I was hell-bent on becoming a journalist. I was a great writer, And I was like, well, I could use my social skills and my writing skills to become a journalist. And I was like, I'm going to write for Essence and Vibe and Honey Magazine. That's an old school magazine for some of y'all. And then once I moved to the States and got to college, I majored in journalism. I did journalism, radio, TV, all of it, and still wanted to do journalism as a career. But also being an immigrant, I realized that I probably wasn't going to get sponsored to be a journalist. So being sponsored as in like someone would hire me and also petition for my visa to stay in the country. Because after college, you have a very short amount of time to figure out a job that will basically sponsor you. And once I realized that was going to be a hard lift, I decided to switch over and be more on the corporate side of things. So I ended up working at UNCF as my first job, and I worked in the comms department. And then I used to be obsessed with the media department, and I was there every day. And I started doing voiceovers. I started writing scripts. I was a production assistant on video shoots. And then they hired me. And my boss at the time taught me basically everything under the sun around graphic design. And I started doing social media. And again, just knowing that, yes, I still love journalism. I still wrote for a music website in my spare time. And I interviewed a lot of musicians, entertainers. But in terms of a career, I had to make a decision, and I stuck with public relations just to be on the other side of the story. So that is how I became a publicist. And I also used to see a lot of cool publicists around. I was like, these women are on red carpets. They're glamorous. They look like they're having fun all the time, which I do as well. But yeah, it was just a beautiful merging of the dream that I had to be a writer.
I know that I definitely enjoy living my best life through your Instagram. So I definitely know you're living your best life. Curious, because you're one of the few people I've met in life who got their bachelor's and their master's in the thing they actually wound up doing with their life. So did you know from a very early age that journalism and then PR communication would be a field that would be edifying for you? Like, and how did you know that?
Yes and no. I think when I was a kid, I was one of those kids who used to be up in the attic reading books. Like books were my best friend. So I used to love reading. I used to love writing. But of course, being African, my family was like, "You're going to be a doctor," and I said, "Okay." And the happy medium there was going to Hopkins. I did major in public relations, but my minor in the master's program was actually public health. So, being from Zimbabwe as well, I was very committed to, having some type of health element to what I was doing. But once I really got deeper into the work I was doing, I kind of departed a little from that. And, I realized that I wanted to smile while I worked. And sometimes, the public health sector and the health sector can be kind of depressing, and depressing in the way that just like, I don't know that we have the best health system in this world, and people are really suffering out here. And it was a lot to communicate those stories, those statistics, and I still do to this day, but it was just a lot. So I decided to kind of veer over to the entertainment side of things, but majoring in both journalism and then PR was great because I'm a bit obsessive and a perfectionist. So I wanted to make sure that I was doing my due diligence and actually learning my craft instead of just jumping into something and figuring it out.
You talked briefly about the role of the mentor that you had at one of your previous jobs. How important do you think it is, especially for a young person, to identify a mentor who's working in the field that they're interested in?
Super important. I've had a lot of mentors over my career. So I went to Claflin University, which was a HBCU. It is an HBCU, actually a top 10 HBCU in the country. And the funny thing is, when I landed at UNCF, the two people who interviewed me actually happened to be from Claflin. They were also alum. One of them is a Delta. I'm a Delta. The other one was an Omega. I'd seen them on campus before, and they didn't recruit me. I just happened to have my first interview with them. So, I mean, the job was pretty much mine because they looked out. So that's an example of how a mentor can petition for you, even though they didn't know me. We had the connection of being in the same school and having the sorority fraternity connection. My current mentors now are amazing, and I'm huge in the field of PR, and it helps to hear the real side of things. And sometimes I'm like, hey, I have to do a red carpet tomorrow. Am I supposed to be standing on the left or the right of the celebrity? I call my mentor with all kinds of crazy questions, and she just sighs very loudly on the phone and says, Mercy, you know how to do this. And I'm like, please help. So there are those mentors, but then there are other mentors who are your peers, right? So people you can who you're sitting next to in class, or who you went to school with, or who you hired or work with, can also be your mentor. So it's not just a top down thing. It can be across, it can be up, it can be whatever, diagonal. But just look around in your circle and see who's petitioning for you, who helps you, and people who just genuinely want to see you win. Those can be your mentors too. So very important.
Great point. I love the fact that part of your story and reading your bio, it's the places that you helped clients be placed to be recognized, but then reading your story, it's about your own journey and where it is that you were born, learning that you have a twin, etc. How do you think you were impacted by moving from student to journalist to PR specialist to CEO? Like, how do you think that trajectory? And I'm asking because some people come out of college, like myself. When I got out of college and I had a job, but I also started Words Beats in Life at the same time. So I was working, but executive director at the same time. But you took a more traditional route of getting your degrees, getting your work experience, getting the relationships to start your company. How valuable was that to you in preparing you to run your own company?
So I feel like my journey is different because it was influenced by immigration, and I'm very honest about that. I've had a lot of conversations, especially with fellow immigrants. I became a citizen of the United States last year, it was a 20-year journey to get there, and I think a lot of it was I felt restricted in a lot of what I did. So I had to work. I had to get degrees. I don't think that I would have got a master's if I didn't have to. Um, but it was still a great decision, and I don't regret it. I do not have student loans, thank you, God. And it was amazing to do that and go that route because every person I met on the journey has helped me get to where I am now. So grad school, I still have some of those same friends. College, same friends. Um, and then going from a job similar to you, when I was working, I also was working on my stuff on the side. So I would do my 9 to 5, and for my first job, I was actually working at a very popular club in DC. So I had a great boss, so I could leave at 4 p.m. and make it in time for sound check and still be able to do my job, stay out till midnight, run home to the last train, the last MARC train, or stay in Silver Spring with my friend, and do it all over again the next day. And even as I've gone through my jobs, and I mentioned the Women's Foundation, which was my last job, which I left last year, I had clients. I had 4 or 5 clients and working full time as a communications director. So I think I always just never liked a linear direction, even though it's looked linear. I've had a lot of like ups and downs and side hustles along the way, which helped me to be able to even have the confidence to go off on my own and legit start a business.
Mercy, for the young people who have never heard of a PR specialist, what does your job actually entail, or your work actually entail?
So I focus on media relations. So public relations is a big umbrella. When people think about public relations, they're like, oh, okay, you get people on TV, which is the simplest way of thinking about it. But it's also crisis communications, it's branding, it's thought leadership, which means I get, clients on panels and I build their reputation. So it's really reputation management. On my end, because I'm a solopreneur, I focus on media relations for a lot of different clients, including Words Beats in Life, of course, one of my faves. And that entails really really understanding what the organization does, looking at where the stories are, and then pitching those stories to the media. For example, we've done a lot of great work together. So we did National Dance Day. One of those pieces we did a lot of TV around National Dance Day, and we had break dancers, right, show some moves on TV, and then Mazi talked about the organization and what the organization does and why National Dance Day is important and how it relates to hip hop and Hip Hop 50. So that's an example of some of the work that I do with clients, but a lot of it is really understanding what is the client's message, what do they want people to know, and ultimately, what does success look like? For one client who is a fitness instructor, for her, she really wanted to get her name and brand out there so she could get more brand deals, and really tell her story. She told her story of going from becoming one of Beyonce's dancers to then moving into the fitness profession and being a huge fitness trainer. So that's an interesting story, right? Because you're like, well, who would leave Dancing with Beyonce and J Lo and Lady Gaga and all these folks to become a fitness instructor? Well, her journey literally led her to that, and she wanted other people to understand why and how she looks at her own body and how she wants women to look at their bodies. So, media relations is essentially figuring out what is my client's story, how can we best tell it, what are the best mediums, should Words Beats in Life be in, let's see, what's a good example? Mazi, what's a good example? Mazi,
Washingtonian Magazine.
yeah, I mean yes, the answer is yes. But would you want to be in Cosmo magazine? Maybe not, right? So there's just different ways to promote your clients and make sure you show them in the best light, and that's essentially what I do every day.
I was over here thinking to myself, do I want us to be in Cosmo?
Yeah.
It's a good question. So you actually bring up something really good. I never told you this, but before we hired you, we had 2 other publicists be recommended to us.
Mhm.
Neither one of them wanted to take us on as a client.
Oh.
One, because one of them was focused mostly on musicians, and the other one wasn't in this area, so she didn't have relationships with local media.
Mhm.
Are there criteria that you take into consideration when selecting a client? So it's not just, hey, Mercy's a great publicist, I should hire her, but does she want to work with you? Like, what are the factors you consider when deciding who you're going to work with?
So for lack of a better description, I always describe PR like dating. And that you don't just say, oh, I want a partner, right? You have to figure out, well, what does that partner look like? What qualifications do they need? So these are great questions, Mazi. I don't just take on anyone. I think there are a lot of different factors, like one, do they have a budget? I worked with a lot of independent musicians and I love y'all. I really do. But I found in the beginning, they were all like giving me their savings, their life savings, and saying, I just want to be a star. Here is my last. And I was like, please don't. No one should do that to anyone. I am not a star maker in that way. I like to think I am, but no. So having a budget is important because PR is an amazing investment when you're actually ready for it. Having something to say is important. I've had people approach me and they're like, oh, I just want to be in the Washington Post. And I'm like, why? And they can't answer that question. And that's when I kind of back away from them. And I suggest other things. Like sometimes you need to start at the ground level and build a foundation of, creating a website. Do you have a bio? Do you have a product? What is it that you're offering the world and why do they need to know that it's out there? So I work with clients who kind of have a package already, and a ready-made product. I'm not really there to ideate with you on what the story could be if there isn't a story, because then that becomes like pulling teeth, and then you essentially waste my time and yours, and of course you're wasting your resources as well. So the criteria is definitely having a story to tell, and a consistent one, right? And having a package, having a website, just having the basic things that can help someone find you in the first place.
I thought this would be a really interesting conversation for a couple of reasons. One, because of course I enjoy working with you, but also because you as a company have secured us more media in less than 365 days than we secured for ourselves in the previous 21 years. And we had the same story. So what if it's not, for the people that have a story to tell but don't have a publicist and don't have the relationships with media, what role can a publicist play for them? And I'm asking this question because I had been being asked by an artist who works at Words Beats and Life for at least 5 years to hire a publicist. And I was like, for what? They're not going to be able to do something we couldn't do for ourselves. And then I met Mercy, and I'm like, I tell everybody now, you need a publicist.
Thank you, Mazi. Please record. I need to record that clip and put that on my website. So complimentary. But yeah, so again, it depends. Like I've worked with huge companies that poured a lot of money into PR and they were not ready. I think maybe it's that you weren't ready at that time, but I think it's also really understanding the value of PR. A lot of people see PR as, okay, she'll get me on the news and she'll keep getting me on the news, but it is actually deeper than that. I think one of the best compliments I've gotten from a friend is that I really understand the art of PR. When you think about communication, you could tell someone like, hey, I'm selling cookies. And they're like, okay, cool. 2 thumbs up, right? You think all your cousins and family will buy it. But the next day they forget. And you got to say, hey guys, I'm selling cookies. And they're like, oh, really? Since when? And then 2 weeks later, you're like, hey, I'm selling cookies. And they're like, oh yeah, you sell cookies, because it's that power of repetition. You want to be able to communicate well enough that people understand what you're offering. And we have this thing where we think people care about everything we're doing. And I am very honest with my clients, like nobody cares about that. We need to make people care. So I think being able to have a publicist who understands your story and understands how to communicate it is one of the best things you can invest in. And then also it's timing, right? There's been moments, and right now I feel like breaking news is at every second, but as much as everyone's story is important, there's some real stuff happening in the world. So I've had clients who had the perfect story and they got bumped because, a president said something, or clearly there's a war right now. So it's just knowing, like, sometimes timing is a big thing. Hip Hop 50 was a perfect year for Words, Beats, and Life to have a lot of stories out there. It just makes a whole lot of sense. It doesn't mean you won't have stories next year, but this is a year where it's like, oh, we really need to do something, right? So timing, really understanding the what of your story, and figuring out who is the audience that needs to hear it. Those are all real things that I think a publicist can help you figure out, because you have a real job, other things to do. For you to stop and then pitch yourself to Washington Post, Washingtonian, all that is great, but all of those things take time. It does take relationships. There are producers now who will take what I give them because they know I produce great quality. But that took over a decade of being in their studios and bringing them different clients and crossing fingers that things worked out. But now it's like developing that trust. And honestly, most clients don't have time to do that. So it's best to hire someone who does.
So 2 questions. You mentioned earlier that your decision to pursue a master's had to do, from your own point of view, with being an immigrant. I'm curious, what role do you think college plays in preparing someone for the kind of work you do? And then second, for people that are going to be pursuing internships or even kind of entry-level positions, what kind of jobs should a young person be looking for if they're interested in the world of public relations?
So I am a big supporter of school. I did really enjoy getting a master's. I actually did my thesis on Barack and Michelle Obama and how they were portrayed in the media and Black love, and it was amazing. So I do not regret getting a master's. I do think that qualifications these days are changing a lot. So when you look at someone's resume, the whole master's, doctorate, all that, I feel like was a little more important back then, particularly for communications, than it is now. I can't speak to other fields because, you should get a doctorate if you're going to be a therapist, for example. But I think it really just depends on where you want to be. When it comes to PR, I think going to school is great. I did it because I just had no former training in PR whatsoever. And honestly, PR is a field where you have to get the experience. You're not going to learn it in a classroom. You'll learn the basics and you'll understand storytelling and you understand how serious it is to tell a client's story. But once you get out in the field, the same way with journalism, you have to handle things with care, and you get that by getting experience, particularly at an agency. I didn't go the agency route because, again, I decided to do PR a little later in life, and I couldn't work at an agency. Again, immigration. I was working the nonprofit. But working at an agency is great because you're going to get that ground up experience. You are going to be able to work across different clients. Um, I definitely learned just by doing. I would say I was baptized by the fire by working in that club. I was doing PR for all the national artists that came in town for the club. So I learned as I did. And I used to copy other publicists. I was like, okay, I saw their press release. I'll just make mine the same. But I think at an agency, if you're really interested in PR, you learn the basics and how to do everything. But if you just want a career in communications, I say work across all of it. If you can do journalism, if you're a great writer, not every agency, every organization has a communications department. So if you're interested in crypto, they need you. If you're interested in nonprofits, they definitely need you. If you're interested in tech, anything that you're interested in, they have a comms department and need someone to tell their stories, work on their branding, handle their social media, and all of the above.
It's interesting because I feel like, I've done this work now for almost 22 years, be 22 years in January.
Mhm.
And there was a good decade or so where I was recruiting marketing interns, and every young person in college was a social media expert. What role do you see expertise in social media from platform to platform playing in the role of a PR specialist?
So I think the industry of PR is changing a lot. I know, quite frankly, I cannot survive just by doing media relations. Um, Technology is moving so quickly. I'm now learning how to incorporate AI in my work. And I think with social media as well, that is a big factor. I actually get a lot of clients from social media. They see me on Instagram and they're like, hey, I've been watching you for a while. I'd love to talk to you about PR. And some of those folks have become amazing clients that I've worked with for, over 2, 3 years. So it's important to stay in touch with everything that's going on social media and tech. And that way you're able to actually give your clients some great feedback, and give them some suggestions. Even though I don't touch my client's social media, I'm like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you did like a Mozzie minute for Words, Beats, and Life? And, every day Mozzie just comes on and gives like tips or tricks or whatever for, some of the youth who are interested in hip hop. Um, things like that are really helpful to add that value to your clients. And yeah, it's important to stay on top of it. I think even just for yourself as a publicist or a budding entrepreneur or a student, those things can really separate you from other people. Sorry, someone was knocking on my door. I'm like, wait a minute. But yes, staying in touch with social media is super important. And I just think you'll honestly be left behind if you don't. Like I have other publicists who are like, should I add this to my roster? And I'm like, it's a good skill to have because things are moving quickly. Video has become a huge thing. TikTok is my favorite platform right now, and that's a different way of storytelling, and that really can help clients and move the needle too.
One of the things that every person I've talked to this week has in common is this idea that they are a storyteller. Many of the people I've talked to have been photographers or filmmakers, or musicians or dancers, and they think about their craft as a way to tell a story.
Mhm.
And we've talked clearly about, if you're pushing an organization or an event or a product, that there's a story to tell about that. But do you feel like most of your ability to tell stories came from those early years of being a voracious reader, or was it your ability to just get to know people? Like, what was it that helped you to become a great storyteller?
I think what we started this chat, you said I'm a real person, real, recognize real. I just really think people are interesting, and I have a natural curiosity because I've seen so many cultures and seen so many different practices across the world, and it's crazy kind of to be. I feel like I'm a chameleon in a way where I can fit into different groups. And then people are like, "Oh yeah, you're American, right?" I'm like, "No." They're like, "You didn't go to school here?" I'm like, "No, but for college." And they're like, "Wait, I can't believe it." Or even when I go to Zim, they're like, "Oh yeah, you don't live here anymore." So to be able to relate to people, I think has been a great quality that I think I have, and I think that's enhanced my storytelling. Um, and honestly, I sit here literally at this table, at this computer, and I think about all my clients and I'm like, okay, what makes them different? What's that unique factor that they have that nobody else does? So I could pitch it. So I think that's been like, it's like this nimble thing where you listen to people talk and then you're like, oh, do you realize that you're like the first Black person to ever do this? And they're like, oh, I never thought of it that way. Because most of the time my clients think their stories are kind of boring. And I'm like, that's actually really interesting. Let's lean into these little tips and tricks and things that you're telling me because no one's ever said that before. So I think with storytelling, um, doing everything that I've done has really helped. But it's just, yeah, being able to like look at people and pick out those interesting factors has been huge.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we take a quick commercial break so you can deal with that person at your door?
Thank
And
you.
let you go ahead and do that. So why don't we go ahead and I've got a couple of commercials. If you're tuned in right now, thanks so much for watching. My guest is taking care of a quick bit of business, and I've got a couple of different promotional videos because Words Beats Life is doing a lot of things. So why don't I share a couple of those with you? All right. We started off with enrolling in the academy. Why don't we check out one of the most epic events we ever hosted, which was the Words Beats in Life Festival.
One, I love you. Two, I love you.
All right, we're back. So what's funny is that before you, Mercy, that was our PR. Was just creating videos and putting them out on the internet and hoping that somebody would see them and engage with them. I know we went to break with a question that you had started to answer.
It was about, what was it about? I don't remember. I think it was about working in PR or getting a job in PR.
So we were talking about the role of social. We talked about the
Yes, don't
kinds
get
of job that people could be looking to get to prepare them for careers in PR, especially for young people who were thinking about the fields that are connected. So maybe we answered that question. So maybe the next question would just be, can we talk about the tools that you utilize? So because before I met you, it was just the press release that you would send out to some random email address and hope that someone would respond. What are the other tools of public relations beyond the press release?
Yeah, so we use a number of tools. One of the most important things, of course, is relationships, but how do you get those, right? So let's say you're a musician and you have a song and you're like, I want to send this to music websites. Where do you start? Publicists do a lot of research. You have to figure out, okay, what are the music sites I want to be in? Who are the editors? And if you're a hip hop artist, you're not going to send a press release for a hip hop song to a jazz writer. So it's just it's a nuanced thing, and knowing who to contact, where they are, how do they prefer being contacted. So we actually have media databases. I use Cision. There's a media database called Muckrack. There's Meltwater, and there's a few more that are coming out. So what a media database has is literally everybody's contact information. The hard part about PR too is that journalists like to move around. So you could end up pitching a journalist who you thought was at the Washington Post, but now they're at Washingtonian. So it's also basically we're glorified stalkers, if you will, where we have to figure out, oh, right, Stacey isn't at Washington Post anymore. She moved, or they moved states. And now, I have Stacey in Portland, Oregon, and I have a client there. So it's perfect. I can just reach out to her. But you can look in the database and search Stacey's name and find her email, her phone number. Sometimes there's a note that says Stacey does not like email. Sometimes there's a note that says only call this person. So it's literally, we go in this database, we create a whole spreadsheet of, okay, this list, this media list is going to be for this client, for this event. And that's one of our most important tools, because it's becoming harder and harder to keep up with a lot of journalists because of layoffs, companies turning over. A lot of media entities are closing. So media databases really help us figure out where people are and where we can find them. Other tools would be social media. It would be, our websites. Like I mentioned, AI. Sometimes I'm using ChatGPT to start a press release, not finish it, because it can only get you so far. But sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't feel like writing. So I have ChatGPT start a prompt for me. And so we can use so many different tools to do our jobs. And of course, a lot of publicists like myself can also do graphic design. We can also, like I said, do voiceovers, write scripts. We use video. So it's an amazing toolbox. And we have a lot of different resources that we use to do our jobs.
Note to self: next time we're doing a PSA, holla at Mercy about recording it. So we've got a question here from one of our good friends off of Twitch, Prowess the Testament. She says, incredible interview. Mercy is amazing. Can she share with emerging professionals what the importance of affinity professional groups for networking like ColorCom?
Thanks, Prowess, for this question and for the compliments. So I used to work with ColorCom. It's Women of Color in Communications, an amazing organization that honestly helped me become a better publicist. I basically met all of the publicists and VPs of communications agencies. And once you're a part of an organization like a ColorCom and able to network with, other individuals going through the same thing you are, we're able to swap notes. We're able to help each other get the right journalist contact. We're able to really be able to help each other. So groups like that are gold. You never know what they can do. Some of us have created businesses together. I'm still best friends with a lot of people from ColorCom, including the founder, who's a good friend of mine. We've helped each other in so many different ways. Some of my mentors all came from ColorCom, actually. So it's super important, even though some people don't like networking and people are shy and there's a little social anxiety, you'd be surprised how it can really improve your life. So I would encourage people to find their village, if you will, whether it's ColorCom, which I think is amazing for women of color in communications, or, PRSA, even NABJ, Black journalists, just being in proximity of other journalists, that's a great relationship builder. So look at these different organizations, of course, fraternities, sororities, network across. I know companies have their own groups, networking groups as well, like ERGs, employee resource groups. But ColorCom is perfect. And I think everyone should network in some form or fashion. Don't just stay home and be on Instagram and think that you're going to get a job that way. You should be on LinkedIn. You should be going to events. You should get your name out there. So it's super important.
I think I only have one more question left, but depending on how you answer, I might have another, which is just because you described yourself as a solo entrepreneur. What do you see as the future of your company? Do you see yourself growing to have a staff, or do you want to be able to eventually sell it, or where do you see yourself a decade from now?
So I remember first working with Mozzie, and he said, "You do this by yourself? You need to hire people." And I said, "You're right." So that is actually my next step, is to hire folks, because I can't keep doing this on my own. And I do partner with other publicists on different projects, but it becomes a lot, like, to work in a silo by yourself. And it's nice to be able to bounce ideas off of someone else. I think with entrepreneurship, it's such a roller coaster. And I really just wanted to get my footing before I was responsible for someone else's salary. But my goal this year is to figure out how to grow my company in a way that makes sense and to scale. I could definitely see myself building. And to be clear, I never saw myself as a CEO or wanting to have my own company. But the more I've worked with different organizations and entities, I was like, I could do this better, and I want to do it my way and really add that human touch and really be able to care for people and still do great work. A lot of my clients end up being really good friends of mine, and we keep working together, and we've built this community and ecosystem of people who genuinely actually care about the people they're working with. So that's kind of why I went on my own, is just to be able to do things my way. And I want to be able to work with other individuals in my own company who would do the same.
Say word. Mercy, I want to thank you for making time for this interview and being able to share some of your journey with young people who might have never considered a career in PR because they didn't even know that it existed. So I want to thank you for sharing your journey, your story, your triumphs, and sharing some of what you aspire to, because it says a lot about you as a person and your willingness to take what was an idea built on a set of experiences and grow it into something that not only benefits you, but as you said, allows you to grow your village or your tribe, to make a way for other folks to do the same thing.
Thank you. This was great. And, I encourage young folks, use your youth to your advantage, and also, explore PR. It's a lot of fun. You learn a lot. You meet a lot of cool people. You get to work across different fields, and I think you'll love it.
Well, Mercy, thank you so much for joining us today. We've got one day left in this alternative winter break. Oh, actually, Mercy, do you want to can we give out your website so people can actually find you?
Sure. My website is mercyc.com, mercyc.com. And my email is literally that, mercy@mercyc.com. So feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much. If Mercy takes you on as a client, you will not regret it. She is a rainmaker and just an amazing person to work with. And she'll tell you the truth if your story needs some work. Like I said, there's one more day, which is tomorrow. Hopefully you've been enjoying this series. We really love the opportunity to be able to talk to some of our region's most impactful creatives, to be able to share what it is that is possible in the world of media arts, especially if you're considering a career. I'm Mazi Mutafa, Executive Director of Words, Beats, and Life. Peace, y'all.